Tim Thompson with MMAnews.com here with the World Series of Fighting CEO Carlos Silva. Carlos, thanks for taking some time out of your very busy schedule. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great, Tim. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Again, we appreciate the time. We just wanted to get to know the head of the World Series of Fighting a little bit better. So let's start out here. What's your earliest memory of fighting?
That's a good question. My earliest memory of fighting is probably the Thrilla in Manila. Would probably be my earliest memory of fighting, just because I remember the catch line, being so catchy. I was a little kid. I obviously knew Ali, and that's definitely the thing that sticks in my head. I think what year was the Thrill in Manila? Was that 76?
I believe
it was.
That was 1976. Yep.
Yeah, 76. So I was 10 years old, and that's probably the earliest real memory that I have of Muhammad Ali and that amazing fight and that amazing promotion around the fight.
Well, there's obviously nothing could be more captivating to a 10-year-old boy than obviously Muhammad Ali and the Thrill of Manila. That was actually 1975. So just wanted to make sure I checked our facts on that one. So the reason I asked that is, you were such a successful businessman. For people who don't know, from your bachelor's at Boston College to your master's at George Washington, you've worked with companies such as AOL. You've worked on the Olympics for Universal Sports. You've got when you were with the Back 9 Network, you got on DirecTV with them. You bought apps. You've done basically everything possibly a businessman can do in your lifetime and been successful at all of it. How did you go from that to becoming the CEO of World Series of Fighting?
Sometimes things just happen. It turns out that we were kind of reconstituting the company last summer, and it turns out that a couple of our new board members were guys that had been part of my career as I came up through AOL Time Warner and Universal Sports and other places. Guys like Mark Ford, who's now the number 2 at Time Inc. and it was head of Sports Illustrated when I was at AOL running AOL Sports, and we were buddies for a long time. He joined the World Series of Fighting board because he knew Bruce Dyfick, our owner, one of our owners for a long time, and guys like Mike Stevens, who's the CMO of the New York Giants. Mike was a buddy of mine when he was here in Washington with the Redskins, and actually a couple of my guys from AOL Time Warner, when they left AOL, they left and went to work for the Redskins. So I knew him for years and years, and they gave me a call and told me that they were really trying to sort of reinvigorate the promotion, bring in some new folks. They really liked my media background. They had a really great core fighting team with guys like Ray Seppo that have so many great years and is so well respected in the fighting industry, but really needed a guy that had been in media and sports, that knew the NBC guys, that understood what we needed to do as a show on a big network and not just a fighting promotion. And it just worked out. I was excited about it. I kind of knew what had happened between, say, 2004, 2005, and now with the UFC and other promotions that had become part of the UFC. We actually even looked back in the day at AOL Time Warner and an investment in the UFC when I ran AOL Sports. So I was well aware of the great sort of wave that the UFC had created, and I thought being partners with NBC and sort of already being part of that family, being partners with IMG, and I was already part of their family because I used to buy a lot of content from them back in the Universal Sports days. It just seemed like an interesting fit, and I really liked some of the other team members, so I jumped in as CEO just about this time last year.
So were you a fight fan before? Or I shouldn't say a fight fan. Were you an MMA fan prior to becoming a part of WSOF?
I think I was more of an MMA fan as a sports fan. I don't think I was a core MMA fan. I was more, again, sort of being in the industry and being in the sports industry, it's hard to be, unfortunately, it gets tough to be a fan because you're even when you're at big events like the Super Bowl or the World Series or the Daytona 500, you're also, you're at work. That's where your office is. And so I think I was, much more of a sports businessman around fighting and what was going on and the growth and how I, felt like it was really becoming, one of those top 5 sports, sort of in that NASCAR, PGA Tour, NHL, kind of level of sport, versus the NFL or baseball or the NBA. But yeah, I was definitely a fan from a sort of a sports businessman perspective.
Sure. So you're brought in to kind of bridge that gap between the MMA sports side to the sports business side, the media side, as you said. How is it working with Ray Sefo, who kind of, as the, matchmaker, the more than the fight end of it, how is it working with him?
Great. Great. Ray and I have a great personal relationship. We also have a great business relationship. I think Ray fully understands what he brings to the table. He understands what I brought to the table and how we've, really started to do some new things with NBC and found ways to work with them in ways that maybe before we couldn't, just because I speak their language. I respect that I've learned a lot about fighting and the fight game, and I work for Ray when it comes to fighters or the fight game. But Ray works for me when it comes to the business and the media side, but he gives me input, and it's a great team relationship. He's taught me a lot, and I think he's probably learned a lot from me as well on the media and sports side, which is helpful.
Yeah, it seems like a great balancing act between the two of you, taking advantage of each other's strengths. So the state of the company right now, you've absolutely grown. You've ventured outside of the U.S. I want to touch on that a little bit. What do you think the state of the company is right now, and do you guys plan on continuing to go with global expansion?
I think the state of the company is. I think we're really on solid ground. I think look, we all know that there's 3 big, national network promotions. The UFC is, far and away the biggest, and has, the most respect from everybody, fans and even the business side included. And then there's Bellator and us, and we're kind of sitting in that next, if the UFC is in the A position, I think Bellator and World Series of Fighting are in that B position, and I think we bring slightly different styles to the way that we put on our fights. I think Bellator does sort of fit the Viacom, genre very much, and I think we fit the NBC sports genre. I think we're very authentic to sport. I think we're very authentic to the athletes and the fighters. I think Ray and all of us have really nurtured some of these guys, literally from the gym all the way into the major leagues. Guys like Justin Gaethje, guys like Marlon Moraes that literally have been with World Series of Fighting throughout their careers and sort of were kind of discovered and have come up and are now, belt holders. And I think being authentic to the fighters and for the piece that I really brought is to really make the fans understand how great athletes these figers are. They're more than just fighters. They're really amazing athletes. They're amazing endurance athletes. They can jump and run and do all the things that any of the great athletes, whether they're an NBA player, whether they're any of these guys that are great athletes. And I think that's been lost. I think the public sometimes thinks of them only as fighters when they get into the cage, and I'm trying to help nurture that these are really great athletes.
So that brings me to my next question, which is a little bit long-winded, so forgive me. You have the 2 other, I agree completely with you. There's definitely the top 3, World Series of Fighting, Bellator, and UFC. It seems like UFC has tried to base everything off of it being a sport, build the athlete side of it, as you said, and has gone after a little bit of the WWE talent. Now they have brought in CM Punk, they brought in a Brock Lesnar. You then have a Bellator side, which obviously they still have great athletes as well. Don't mean any disrespect to them. They've tried to appeal more to the show side of it. Had some old fights with Kimbo, rest in peace. They had
Sure.
Dada 5000, Hoist Gracie, Ken Shamrock, etc., etc. Now they're kind of going after the amateur wrestlers, the people that they don't know if they'll pan out or not. Do you see World Series of Fighting leaning more towards one of the promotions as how you see your future going, and in terms of MMA free agency?
Look, I think I'm going to answer the question maybe a little bit in reverse. I think from a free agency standpoint, doesn't matter what sport you're in. When top folks become available, you look at them. Whether they're a left-hander on the Dodgers that wants to go to the Nationals, whether it's a wide receiver that's getting to the end of his contract, whether it's LeBron James, who right now is the most famous free agent on the planet. Everyone is going to take a look because those kinds of stars make a difference to your league. So we're always going to take a look at those stars, especially now that we've grown and we are on that national stage alongside Bellator and UFC. So we have to look at them. And by the way, they're now looking at us. I don't think they were looking at us before, Tim. And now Ray is getting calls from those agents alongside calls to some others. And I think that's a sign that World Series of Fighting is right there with them. Having said that, I think that look, the UFC is the UFC, and they're the ones that have really defined the sport over the last 15, 20 years. They've got some options that are available to them in a unique way. I think Bellator and the team have put together some very interesting fights using maybe some of these names from the past. I think for us, what we're trying to do is, again, build that brand. And if you look on social media, that when you watch a WSOF event, you really feel like the two guys that are getting into that cage, they're there, they're prepared, they have trained, they've had a great training camp, they're coming to put on a great fight. And first and foremost, I think that is the core of the World Series of Fighting product, is that we've got great fighters that are prepared, that are hungry, and want to put on a great show and leave it all in the cage. And look, I think that's where we are now. It'll continue to evolve, and I think there'll be opportunities around entertainment and even guys that like a Fitch or a Jake Shields that are great stars and have been great stars, but now they've found a nice home. But I still think when you look at a guy like Jake Shields, he is going to have a great camp, but he's coming out not just to be a great champion from the past, but to be a great World Series of Fighting fighter.
No, and that's fair, and I couldn't agree more. Like you said, the way you've built it up, trying to, make sure that people know you're having top athletes. And let's face facts here, guys like you mentioned, Justin Gaethje, Marlon Moraes, those are top 10 guys in the whole world, regardless of what anyone says. So that's
right.
I mean,
that's absolutely right.
Let's go. So when those guys build on that a little bit. So I know Marlon Moraes is coming up here in contract. Are you involved with contract talks with these fighters at all? Someone like Marlon Moraes, who I know is coming up on his contract, I believe here. Are you guys going all in to keep them a part of World Series of Fighting?
Absolutely. Look, we have to. We want our stars the same way that I want the stars to talk about World Series of Fighting as their home. They've got to know that we want World Series of Fighting to be their home, and I think we've shown that already with renegotiations with guys like Marlon. And I'm absolutely involved. That's the business side of the sport that really, Ray helps direct me around, where we should go and what we should do. And, we're really a team on those things. But, when it comes to the business negotiations, absolutely, I'm involved in every part of the business.
Again, just a couple more minutes here with Carlos Silva, CEO of World Series of Fighting. Carlos, one of the biggest point, you touched on it earlier, a few years back, or MMA was definitely defined as more of a second-tier sport, so to speak. Not on the same level as a National Football League, MLB, NBA, things of that nature. Now it seems like it's inching closer and closer. Do you feel like the sport still has that potential to get on that level, or is it just a totally different beast? It's the fight business.
I think it's already on that level. I don't think it has the potential. I think it's already on the level, and all the respect for the UFC for bringing us all along to get us on that level. Look, the reason that we're going to be able to go to New York is because of the UFC and the 10 years of hard work that everyone did to do that. I think that just is another indication that, look, the New York Rangers play in New York City, and so, the Mets play in New York City, the Yankees play in New York City. If you want to be a major sport, you got to play in the state of New York and in the big city. And so I think that was a big, big step to continue to put MMA as a whole on that, on that same stage with those same sports that I just mentioned. And are there still some sports that are bigger? Absolutely. Look, I mean, the NFL is the NFL, and MLB is MLB, and Adam Silver and the entire team at the NBA, they're amazing, and the finals were amazing, going to Game 7. But I do think if you look at UFC and you look at Bellator and you look at World Series of Fighting and you put them all together, there's no doubt in my mind that it is a top 5 sport. And you look at the ratings and you look at the audience and you look at what's happening on social media. I mean, Tim, I've been in this digital game a long time, and the amount of buzz that I see on social media for all of the different promotions down to the regional level is crazy. And I just think the kind of audience that we've got in MMA is so engaged around what I've been working on for a long time, and what people used to call a 2-screen experience. I mean, that's what social media is, and I think MMA just plays into that in a huge and important way that just continues to make the sport bigger.
So I agree with that completely. I really respect the fact that you acknowledge the UFC is the reason that MMA organizations are going to ride on those kind of coattails, so to speak, and give that credit with New York. I think that's really respectful. A lot of people really haven't acknowledged that. Do you think that in time and the fighters' pay is going to get on the same level? Obviously, there's stars who are making fabulous money, but I would say the mid-tier fighters, are they going to be on the same level as in the sports of Major League Baseball, NHL, things of that matter?
It's a good question. I don't know that I know the answer to that yet. I mean, there's a lot of, it's not yet clear, where, MMA and the kind of contracts that we've got with our athletes, versus other leagues are. I mean, the PGA Tour, those guys are all independent guys. Guys in the NFL or the NBA are part of their players' associations, and they've got contracts with individual teams, but they're governed by their players' associations and the other wage, salary caps, and collective bargaining agreements that they have in place. I don't know how it's going to play out yet. I do think that right now there's obviously some very big stars, and we all know who those stars are, like a Conor McGregor, that are making big money, and deservedly so. They bring big audiences and big pay-per-view. I think it's a question of how do you start to find ways across the board to protect your athletes and give the guys a great living because they're professional athletes. Not everyone's going to be a star. Not everyone's going to be Roger Federer. Not everyone's going to be LeBron James. There's only a few of them, and those are the guys that always make the most money. It's just the way it works in sports. But there's got to be a way that some of those journeymen can earn a nice living, and I think there's different ways to do that with as the sport continues to grow.
Absolutely, I truly believe that with the evolution of the sport and the more they grow, something will be figured out. Things will be made right. You were talking about big money. Rumors are running wild that the UFC is going to be sold. So with that, if they are sold, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing for World Series of Fighting, or indifferent?
Look, I think if the UFC owners want to sell it, then it's a good thing for the UFC owners. If the UFC owners don't want to sell it, it's good too. I mean, look, they own the property. We've all read the same articles and talked to the same people, and it seems like it's going to happen. And if they want it to happen, then God bless them. I think it's great for them. They've built this thing over 20 years and invested a lot of money in it, and maybe they feel like it's time between these different groups that have said they're part of it. I think it's great for the sport. I think it establishes the biggest and actually don't even know if it's the oldest. Although I think if it's not the oldest, it's certainly as old as any others, and it establishes MMA in the big leagues with all of the big sports, whether it's a Premier League, an EPL, an NBA or an NHL. I mean, look, it's a big number, and I think it's amazing for the sport that there's big companies that value MMA in such a way that they would want to pay that kind of a number to show how important it is as a sport. And I'm just happy to be part. I'm just happy to be part of another one of the promotions that are putting on great fights, because I just think MMA is here to stay, and I just think it's going to continue to grow over the next 5 to 10 years. It's just it's I think what everybody wants. Within 5 minutes you got great action, and it makes for great television.
Well, all signs are definitely pointing that way. Quick question for you. At AOL, did you work at all with Ariel Helwani? Was that the same time frame?
No, I don't. Mike, you might be able to help me there. I was at AOL from 1998 to 2006. I think Ariel was there quite a bit after me.
But he was at, you mean SB Nation, right? He was.
Okay.
No, yeah.
Ariel was not, he was part of SB, he's a part of SB Nation. Before that, he was working for a company owned by Wasserman Media Group.
Actually, my tie there is that Kevin Laughlin, who runs SB Nation, used to be on my sports team and was my director of sports at AOL, and Jim Bankhoff, who runs Fox, was my boss because he ran all the programming at AOL, and I ran news and sports.
Okay.
So there's some definite connections there.
Yeah, where I was going with that, I know the MMA hours with SB Nation now. They were with AOL FanHouse at one point. I didn't know if those paths may have crossed. Right. Regardless.
Yeah, FanHouse actually happened right as I was leaving.
Okay.
And really started to sort of take. I left in 2006, and Louis DeBorkin and the team there were just cultivating FanHouse in 2007 and 2008.
So the reason I bring that up, I just wanted to get your quick opinion, if you have one at all, just the way Dana White's relationship with the media, how that all unfolded. Obviously, we've kind of heard both sides of that story now. What do you think of all that? What do you take? Do you think everyone needs to be more professional? Do you think the whole thing's a joke? What are your thoughts?
I think the whole thing is certainly entertaining. Dana's got a really hard job running a really big league that has a lot of news and has a lot of money tied to a lot of news. And there's times where everyone's got to show respect, and it seems like maybe Dana didn't think he was getting shown the kind of respect that he should have around information, and he had to do something about it. So, I think it was, like anything in sports these days, all of those things tend to, take on a third and fourth and fifth life, aside from, the stuff with Ariel and Dana and all that. I mean, you can, Wimbledon's going on this week, and there's going to be stories that are that are going to be silly and stupid at Wimbledon about all kinds of stuff. It's just kind of the way it works now, and in the way in the world we're in, everyone's got a voice on social media. So sometimes things take on a life of their own that probably in the past wouldn't. But it's what makes it interesting. It's it's kind of it's just the way the world is now, and you just gotta roll with the punches.
Two more questions, quick ones, I promise, and I'll let you go. Thank you very much for being so generous with your time. One of the best things I feel like World Series of Fighting has done is bringing in Chael Sonnen at the announcer table. He's great. Whether you love him or hate him, you're going to listen to him because he's entertaining and he knows what he's talking about. Is there any chance once his suspension is up, I know he's busy, he has his podcast, he has his new Submission Underground that he's launching, any chance you guys make a run for him to try to get him in the World Series of Fighting cage?
Sure. I'd love Chael to fight for us. I think it'd be great. I also love Chael. I think Chael does a great job on our broadcasts. Look, he's still under contract. If even though I say that, it's like anything. I would always respect someone's contract. I'd respect the UFC and Chael around that contract. But yeah, of course, I think anybody, any promotion, if Chael wanted to, jump in and fight or get into the cage, I think would be silly not to want him to. He's not only a great draw, he's been a great fighter, and he's a great personality. We love having him do our stuff with World Series of Fighting, so we're happy to continue that relationship with him and have him do our fights. I think it's great for fans, and I think Chael has a great time too. He's part of the family at World Series of Fighting for sure.
Absolutely. Last one, you're the big-time CEO, very successful all of your life. You get in your car and you turn on your, whatever, it's through your phone, the radio. There's one embarrassing song that you jam out to. What is it? Do you have one?
One embarrassing song that I jam out to, probably UB40 Redwood Wine.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good one. Again, Carlos Silva, CEO for World Series of Fighting. World Series of Fighting's next event is WSOF 32, Moraes vs. Hill 2. Should be a great fight, as Marlon Moraes obviously on the card, Lance Palmer on the card, Shamil Gazmatov, if you don't know, great Russian prospect, 10-0, all finishes, Ben Fodor, all on that card. It's going to be great. Carlos, fantastic work with everything that you're doing. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, nice talking to you, Tim. I look forward to talking again.
Thanks. Again,
Thanks,
I'm Tim Thompson with MMAnews.com. Follow us on MMAnews.com. That's all. Thank you.